Right, so I've actually been away for a while, 6 months to be precise. I'm still doing photography, as you can tell. I love it, it's great. What path we're changing from is the camera path. I've been using the Fuji X-T2 for quite a while now. I would say almost 2 years, or coming up to 2 years, I think. And it's been great. It's been a fantastic camera. I've not seen any or had any issues really with it, but I've moved. I've moved to Sony. With Sony. The major one, really, is autofocus. And I found this with using the Sony cameras around at my work and just using Fuji cameras in general. I found the autofocus between the two is pretty noticeable. The Sony kind of beating it quite badly. Not to say that Fuji's bad, but the Sony's just better for what I want to do. Because I do a lot of wildlife photography, and when it comes down to it, Fuji doesn't really have great subject detection. Well, they have some okay subject detection on like face and eye autofocus, but when it comes to animals, it's not as good and it's not as quick. And just in general, there's no kind of eye autofocus for birds or just animals in general. So with Sony, obviously, I get that. I get that animal eye autofocus. I get that human eye autofocus. That's almost class leading and overall very good. The second reason is ISO handling. Fuji's not been actually that bad. The X-Trans sensor is fantastic. It's overall with its ISO handling for an APS-C sensor, it's been amazing. I've not really had an issue or had to go to an ISO which is unusable. There's been times where I've gone to 3200 ISO and it's been, the image quality's been pretty okay. Other than that, I would say I probably wouldn't push it too far over 3200 just because it will get really noisy and the image quality it drops off quite drastically when you get over that. Whereas with the Sony, it's, yeah, I regularly shoot at higher ISOs now, just because I know that I can. I put my shutter speed to 800 to 1000, and I pretty much just set my ISO to auto, just because I know no matter really what the lighting situation is, I'm going to be able to handle it quite well. Unless it's like, hey, you're shooting into this pitch black area, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna shoot on 800th of a second. I'll probably knock it down to 250 and then shoot from there. Because another issue is Fuji doesn't have stabilization. They do in the X-T4, but the X-T4's body is it's more expensive than that, and it's APS-C. The X-T4 hasn't improved that much from the X-T3, as it, like I said, shares the same sensor. Major upgrades, sorry, are autofocus and battery life's been a pretty big one they changed, and the stabilization in the camera. Now, I get that, and I get full frame, and better ISO handling for the same price, if not cheaper. And I don't really have any lenses for my Fuji anyway, so it's not a massive investment for me, or a massive loss of investment for me to just drop what I've got now and switch while I can. If I carried on and bought, I'd say, a Fuji 100 to 400, then maybe I would have to think about it a lot more because there's a lot more money involved, and that's partially why I'm switching now. And I'm not getting a wide angle lens to start with, just because I don't need it. I don't use my 1655 that much. I primarily use adapted lenses at the moment from Minolta, and they've been fantastic. They've been great, but I do miss autofocus, and obviously one of the reasons of moving was autofocus, and yeah, that's it. I mean, going on from lens selection and lenses in general, Fuji has a great lineup of lenses. They've got a fantastic array of lenses, all very high quality, but it's just Fuji lenses, which isn't an issue, but if you want to get lenses that are slightly more affordable or are built differently, they're just built different. Like, you instead of getting a 35 f2, you want a 35 1.4, but you don't want to spend like 900 quid on it. Sigma have their art series, or they have their contemporary series. They've got some fantastic lenses. Like, for instance, Sigma has the 100 to 400 for Sony. They have the 70 to 200, 2470. They have wide angles, primes. They've got the whole lot, you know. So I can choose between uh, going down the more expensive route, like getting a G Master lens, or I can think about, hey, I kind of want to. I don't use this too often. I don't need a G or a G Master lens. Let me just buy the Sony mount Sigma 24-70 f2.8, you know, which is, I think, maybe like 700, 800 quid, whereas Sony's a second hand one is only about 1300. So quite a big price difference. But that's another reason of why Sony's a lot more friendly when it comes to just general photography. You can get so much more from the camera than you can with Fuji. Fuji's very limited when it comes to lens selection. You've got Samyang, or also known as, I think, Rokinon. Um, Great lenses, but that's it. You know, that's it. Like, you can either go Samyang, which is quite they're very cheap. They're very, like, money orientated, and then you've got Fuji lenses, which is a whole different ballpark of, hey, we want you to give the best optics, best build quality, weather sealed, and autofocus is pretty snappy on Fuji bodies, but you paid twice the price for them, and it's great, but at the same time, I don't need a 56mm f1.2. I don't need, I don't need a full metal body. Plastic lenses are fine for me as long as they're weather sealed. I'm fine with that. Ergonomics is a pretty big deal for me. I go out pretty often, and with my Fuji, I could get a grip extension just like I have on my Sony, but I found even with that, Fuji's grip, it's just really annoying. If their grip was even just remotely close to Sony's, then I would probably think a bit more about it. The button layouts for Fuji's been great. I love Fuji's button layout. Their customizable buttons are fantastic. Sony has a lot of customizable buttons as well. I do miss, there's one on the front, just on the front, kind of round about here on Fuji. Don't know if you saw that. But just about there. That's really useful, actually. It'd be great if I could have that on the Sony, but I can't. I can get one on lenses, which is actually probably what I'll use. But what I found with Fuji's buttons is that a lot of them kind of useless. Well, not the buttons necessarily, but the two dials on top. And I've never used them. I've genuinely never used the top dials on Fuji. I've used the exposure compensation, and that's about it. And it is part of Fuji's selling point, really. Their aesthetic, their top dials it's one of their selling points. And by all means, it's a lovely feature. They look great. Fuji cameras look very nice, but the top dials are intrinsically useless to me, for I have just mapped them to the front and back scroll wheels, which which I have on here as well, so I've not lost anything by losing those. You also have a PASM dial, which Fuji doesn't have a PASM dial. That's fine, but I found with this cage that I have on my Fuji to make it usable with the grip, the dial to switch between movie mode, panoramic, whatever you want to move it from, it gets blocked by the lugs on the side, and it's just a whole mess, really. It's not very fun. This is not saying the Sony is perfect in any way. The Sony's got loads of issues with it, and not issues, but things I would change about it. For instance, the back screen. Fuji's back screen is fantastic. The idea that you can go, hey, let me flip it out to the side, do all that, and then you can go, bloop. That's great. Love that. That's fantastic. Really, really handy on that front. You've got film simulations, which are not very useful because they don't actually store it in the raw data. So when you take your raw files into Lightroom, they don't transfer. It doesn't say, hey, this raw file was creative chromatic, the Chrome one, whatever, or it's not Pro Neg High or Pro Neg Standard or whatever. It doesn't. They don't speak to each other, so you have to choose it and you have to know which ones are which. And I found that with some black and white photos, if I ever shot in black and white on my Fuji, the raw file wouldn't keep that. It would just say, yeah, this is what the photo would look like in a square crop and black and white. I'm like, oh, cool, that looks great, that's awesome. Take it into Lightroom. It's a 16. It's a 2x3 or 3x2 image in full color, and you're like, is this the image I shot in crop with black and white, or is it I? And you just it ruins the flow, and also Fuji's images are a bit weird on Lightroom. It's almost like a watercolory oil painting thing, which I found. I've heard there's a lot of issues with Fuji's images on Lightroom. Maybe that's just it. Maybe that's the reason. But I don't know. But yeah, overall, I'm Sony now. I'm going to be selling the Fuji at the end of the month. And you should hopefully see some more images with a telephoto lens, which would be cool. So yeah, cheers everyone. I hope today hasn't been too boring. I'm trying to. I'll try and get some more videos out. Sorry for it's very warm in the room. I've been, wiping my nose, not my nose, but wiping sweat from my face and everything like that. But yeah, overall, I'm very happy with my Sony. It's been great. What Fuji has is very unique things, and if you're looking for those things, they're great. Fuji's great. But if you just want a leading camera body that can be used professionally, and you have the choice between the X-T4, right, a £1,400 camera, and the A7 III, I would say A7 III has so much more going for it than the X-T4. You have a lot more flexibility in your images, your dynamic range is better, your ISO handling's better, your autofocus is better, stabilization is about the same. I think I'd probably say Fuji's a little bit better in stabilization. Battery life, I believe, is better. Lens selection, once again, better. There's a lot of things that you can mix and match with when it comes to cameras, but Sony compared to Fuji, as a general company and camera, Sony has better cameras than Fuji. But the bodies are equally priced. So, take your pick, really. Fuji's not bad. That's not what I'm trying to say. Fuji has some great cameras and great lenses, and the image quality you get from it's fantastic. And you'll find if you bought a Fuji camera, you're going to be very happy with it, because I was very happy with mine. I've just found different needs. I need a different camera, and that's why I'm moving. Not because I hate Fuji, just because I don't like using it as much. Have fun. Bye.